Hi there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Seth. Today we are going to be rating some different fan theories that have been popular on the internet. The criteria that I'm going to have for these is, what's the fun factor? Is it fun? Is it an interesting idea? Is it something that you're excited to tell people about? Two, what's the likelihood of it being true? Is it actually a chance, or is it just something people are like pulling out of nowhere and saying like, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if? Those are sure maybe fun to talk about, but who cares? You can say that about anything. And then the last one, the criteria is going to be like, how annoying are the people who actually believe that it's true? This one, I don't know. There's just a couple of them where I'm like, it's cool your jets, dude. It's not that cool of an idea. All right, criteria is out of the way. Let's go ahead and get started. Theory number one is going to tie into the 007 franchise, and it's going to be that the name James Bond is actually a code name and not referring to like the guy's actual given name. This is working out because different actors have played James Bond throughout the years, and it really kind of felt like it was, possible, until you get to Skyfall, until you start getting to this Daniel Craig stuff where they really flesh out his whole life. We find out that like the Bond estate or whatever is like a real thing, like that's his real name. And so it really kind of squashes that, but it doesn't eliminate it as an option for like some of those earlier James Bonds, right? I remember like people speculating and guessing like, wouldn't it be so cool if like Pierce Brosnan and Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton like showed up and they were like the bad guys in a James Bond movie? Like, yeah, that could have been pretty cool. And it could have been possible if this James Bond name was actually just a code name. But here's the thing. James Bond already has a code name. It's 007. So I'm kind of like, it seems redundant to have a code name and a code number. I don't know. But, I think this one is fun. It's kind of plausible. I'm going to give it A. Next up, we've got the Pixar movies all taking place in one big universe. Now this one really people kind of have latched onto because there's always little Easter eggs that are tying the current Pixar movie to the next Pixar movie, and Easter eggs are little fun things that are put in there for people who are eagle-eyed to like find. And people have developed this habit of whenever there's an Easter egg in anything, and we're even going to see it further down the list. Whenever there's an Easter egg in anything, people are like, oh, it's a clue that this is all connected to each other. And I understand they're just having fun, but it gets kind of obnoxious when eventually you're like, did you ever think about, I just think about Matt Pat, right, on like film theory and stuff. Did you ever think about how Cars and Toy Story are in the same universe because the Pizza Planet car? And it's like, yeah, I guess we could do that, and it makes some of those movies pretty sad. But it is a fun one, and it does bring some interesting conversations. Is Boo from Monsters Inc. the witch from Brave? No, obviously she's not. But this one gets a B from me because of like that fun factor it's pretty high still. But the likelihood of it actually being true is like 0%. So next up, we're going to jump over to The Dark Knight, and we're going to be talking about the Joker. And people have really kind of been trying to figure out who the Joker is, even though the point that we don't know who the Joker is kind of the whole point of the Joker's character in The Dark Knight. Like finding out who he is almost makes him less important, but whatever. People want to know because we got to know because it's the internet. So some people have theorized that he might actually be like a war veteran. So like an Iraqi war veteran. They can point to like his use of weaponry. Like he knows how to use an RPG and he can shoot machine guns real good. And he's got experience with bombs and all of this different stuff. One thing though that people latch onto specifically with this is that he's talking about his plans, and he's talking about how like the mayor gets killed, that everybody freaks out. But if a bunch of soldiers get killed, like nobody even bats an eye. And people are like, see, he's real emotional there, and that means that he really cares about it. And it's like maybe he does, or maybe it's just an example. But this one is definitely high on the plausibility meter, right? It's like as high as it could be. You're like, sure, he definitely could be, a war veteran. The fun factor of it, not necessarily very high. It's not particularly a happy or fun thought. It doesn't make the movie more interesting, really. Doesn't change anything. I'm gonna put this one at a B tier. Now we're gonna move into some things that are a little more like mind trippy, right? So on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, we got Ferris Bueller who's talking his buddy Cameron into, skipping school with him and his girlfriend named Sloane. The whole thing is like, oh man, Cameron's like really kind of uptight and he's in his shell and he's learning to get over that and, just kind of face the hardships of life and everything. And, the theory is that, Ferris Bueller's not actually real. It's all just, in Cameron's mind. And my problem I have with this one is that like we're actually following Ferris Bueller through like most of the movie, like the beginning of the movie, the end of the movie. Cameron's not there. So for me, it doesn't really carry a lot of weight. Is it like a cool thinking exercise? Sure. Does it make the movie any better? No, I don't think so. I like the idea of Ferris Bueller just being this crazy wild kid who's just getting away with everything. And so I'm going to put this one at C tier. Doesn't hurt, doesn't help the movie. It's whatever. So in a similar vein to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, we also have Fight Club. Now in Fight Club, we actually already know one of the characters is an imaginary friend, right? Technically, it's not a weird way to put it, but a figment of somebody else's imagination. Tyler Durden is not real. So the fan theory in here doesn't have to do with who's real or what, but it's who the narrator actually is. And so some people will say, oh, wouldn't it be crazy that if like the narrator was Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes and Tyler Durden was, Hobbes? And sure, if you really want to stretch things, you could say there are some similarities there. The fun factor for me on this one is a very low. I don't like to imagine the end of Calvin and Hobbes being like Calvin shooting Hobbes in the head, right? That does not add to Calvin and Hobbes. It doesn't add to Fight Club. But this one I think is way too much of a stretch. It's a D tier. Now, you'd be surprised how many fan theories actually are really similar to that. Like, what if this character who is dark and depressing was actually just a grown-up version of a kid's character? And that's actually, the next one is from Home Alone, and it's actually going to cross over with Saw. What if, John Kramer, who is Jigsaw from the Saw movies, is actually Kevin McAllister from Home Alone? I mean, they both set traps. And then that's pretty much it. They both set traps. The difference, of course, being Kevin McAllister sets traps to protect his home, whereas John has some weird sense of justice and like vengeance and everything he's trying to instill into these people and transform their lives. And so, again, not really the same. And it doesn't do good for me to ruin Home Alone by being like, and you know what? Wouldn't it be messed up if like he was the big, like a murderer, a mass murderer? You're really missing the point of Home Alone, guys. It's about the importance of forgiving people and appreciating what you have. Oh my gosh. The more I talk about it, the more I realize it is the same as Saw. Whoa, guys, maybe I take it all back. Maybe I was 100% wrong. No, I don't. I'm just joking. It's a C tier. And we actually have one more of these, character grows up to be other characters. And this one is going to be from Malcolm in the Middle. Malcolm, the main character, grows up and becomes Walter White. Now, you have to completely ignore all of like the timeline issues, right? Like Malcolm in the Middle takes place in the 90s. And, he grows up and then it's just like barely into the 2000s. So you run into timeline issues there. You can be like, oh, he looks just like his dad. And so, yes, the same actor plays the dad in Malcolm in the Middle. Bryan Cranston is great in both of those shows. I might actually argue better in Malcolm in the Middle. Just going to say it. Hal, maybe the best sitcom dad ever. Now, there are some other similarities between the characters of Walter White and, Malcolm. They're both really smart. They're both, really opinionated and strong-willed. But when it comes to like actually having this be anything more than just there's an actor that's in both, so can we connect them? There's not much else there. So this one's going to be another C tier for me. We're going to stick with Breaking Bad for one more and actually see that some people are saying that it could be a prequel to The Walking Dead. And why is that? Well, because they mention a bunch of things that happen in Breaking Bad in The Walking Dead. They're like, man, they mention blue meth. They mention, drug dealers that sound like, specific guys in the show. It's like, wow, can you guys believe it? It's like, yes, I can believe it. Those were just some more of those Easter eggs that are popping up, right? Because it's the same channel. AMC did Breaking Bad and did The Walking Dead. And so there's little connections that they put in there because they thought it was fun. And really, these companies love these fan theories because it just gets people talking about their shows more. And then you watch more and you go in and you spend in more time like, oh, there's another thing. And that's exactly what they want. So they love this kind of stuff. Fun factor on this one doesn't really change anything for me. It doesn't affect the actual story of either of the shows. But, sure, it could be plausible, I guess. I wouldn't really say that it's a prequel to The Walking Dead, even though some people say like the drugs kind of tie into it and everything, and maybe, but more so like it happens in the same world. And to that, I'm like, sure, why not? It could happen. I'm gonna put that one in B tier. These next three theories are ones I like to call ruining your childhood. And this is just really making, some movies that you might have watched as a kid more depressing. So for starters, in the movie Grease, so John Travolta, who plays this guy named Danny Zuko, meets this girl named Sandy over the summer. And how they meet? Well, she was drowning in the ocean and then he saved her. And then his friends and her friends are all like, well, tell us all this stuff. Because then she moves to town. And it's like, oh my gosh, this girl. And now she's here. And it's about them falling in love and her changing and him changing and everything. And so the fan theory in this one is that like actually Sandy didn't get saved when she was drowning. She died. And so she's like in, I guess, purgatory or like dying. And these are her last thoughts, like seeing this guy and like imagining this life together. And the big thing that people like to point out to this is, at the end of the movie, they get in a car and it flies away and everyone's waving at them as they're flying away. And they're like, that's her flying to heaven. And I'm just like, man, people are hopping in things that fly away in musicals all the time. But this one, it's kind of creative. And so I'm going to put it in B tier. Now I'm really ready to ruin my childhood with this one. Like this one was one of those first times that I heard a fan theory and I was like, oh, I really don't like that. And I kind of wish that I'd never heard it. Luckily, I forget about it all the time, and hopefully I will again after I make this video. But it's talking about Rugrats, right? And so the theory is that Angelica is the only real kid in the show, and that she imagines all of the babies that exist because she, is lonely. And so she imagines, like Chucky, and Chucky's mom died in the show. That's canon. But also Chucky died. And so she doesn't know what he would look like, but she knows it was a boy baby. And so he looks like his dad. And then again, they're saying that Tommy is dead. And the thing that they use for that is like, and then, his dad, Stu, he makes toys because he imagines the kid that he didn't have, and he wants to make toys for him. And the reason that their twins, Phil and Lil, are twins is because, that baby, died early. And so they didn't know if it was a boy or girl. So Angelica just imagines both of them. And it's just like super sad. I feel like this was probably just one of those things where it's just like, I had a messed up thought, guys. And this is how all these fan theories go, right? One person thinks of something, makes a post about it, and then it doesn't even really matter how many people read that post. These articles and then videos, I guess, like this one, show up and are all like, what are some fan theories that people believe? And they find one, and then it just takes one article to say something, and then all the other articles just copy that one. And so who knows if anyone actually thought about this more than 5 seconds when they came up with it. But it is pretty sad, pretty depressing. And I like the Rugrats, and I don't like it to be that way. It doesn't hold up when we look at, how much we could say it's likely to happen, considering that Angelica is in like a lot of episodes, but she's definitely not in all of them. And if you're imagining your life and you're making all these imaginary friends and you're the bad guy like that, ooh, guys, Angelica is even worse than we thought. So I'm going to put the Rugrats fan theory in F tier. It's not going to be by itself for long. Finding Nemo has a fan theory where Nemo's just a figment of Marlin's imagination, and he died when the mom died, and it's something that Marlin uses to cope and to overcome. And this is one that completely gets destroyed when it's like, hey, there's a second movie, and Nemo's there. So it's not like actually likely to have happened. But then again, this is a movie about talking fish, so I guess anything is possible, right? I'm putting it in F tier. Now we get one that I actually really like, and I think it's very funny. This is for the movie Titanic, and it's the theory that Jack Leonardo DiCaprio's character is actually a time traveler, and he's been sent back in time to fix like an anomaly, something that's bad's going to happen. And the thing that's going to happen is, Rose, she's real depressed. She doesn't want to marry Billy Zane. And so she's about to jump off the boat. And if she does that, then what would happen is the boat would change its course enough where it wouldn't get hit by an iceberg. And then that would be bad for some reason. And also what happened where this is different than what happened the first time, like what made it so she didn't jump off originally. But anyway, people look at this one and they're like, look at all of these things. Like, he's got a weird haircut for the time. He's using a backpack, and backpacks weren't common for people to use. Also, he's like mentioning this like roller coaster that wasn't built until after the Titanic sank. And so obviously he's a time traveler, and it's not just like a mistake in the story. But anyway, with this one, I kind of like it. I think it makes the movie more fun to watch because he's like a bad time traveler, right? Like, he knew the boat was going to sink. And in fact, that's what he's trying to make sure happens. But he still dies, man. He still dies. Unless that was like part of his, like, you have to go back, you have to die. So that way, I don't know, man, it doesn't make any sense. But I do think it's very funny. Is it like practical and realistic? I mean, of course it is, right? We don't know where he came from. I don't know. For whatever reason, this one just makes me laugh. So it's going S tier, baby. And then the last one I want to mention is Darth Jar Jar from the Star Wars franchise. For whatever reason, people just like to pretend Jar Jar is some kind of mastermind. I feel like it's a coping mechanism for them. Like, the fan theory is actually like, some Star Wars fans are so, easily offended and, so hurt by how bad some of the movies are, they have to try to explain that Jar Jar is actually a bad guy and a mastermind. When really, like, Jar Jar is just like this, forgive me for saying it, fun character who is like kind of stupid and gets manipulated by other people into doing things. Oh man, all the angsty pictures of Jar Jar with like lightsabers and wearing hoods are always very funny. But people like seriously hoping that Jar Jar was going to show up in like the sequel trilogy as like some big bad. Like, I think those people, they had to have been joking, right? If you're having fun with it, that's great too. I'm gonna put this one in D tier. Again, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get why people like this one so much. And so there it is. There's me like rating the fun that people like to have with movies. Hey, if you like fan theories and you like to dig into them and make them up and share them with your friends, that's great, man. Keep doing that. Engage with movies the way you want them to, man. I mean, that's how some filmmakers make their movies. Quentin Tarantino says he wants everybody to be able to watch the movie and make up their own opinions about like what's inside like the briefcase. Like, he doesn't want to tell you what's in there because he wants you to think one thing and somebody else to think something else, and then the movie is different for everybody. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know if there's anything else we should make a tier list of. You're great. I appreciate you. Keep watching movies, keep making fan theories, keep enjoying this beautiful art form, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay, bye-bye.